In today's episode of Building Client Revolution, I'm sharing how I book sales calls for my agency, and in the end, I will share the exact results that I got with this strategy so far. I started a job in a software company a few years ago, and back then, people were already shouting on LinkedIn, on Instagram, cold outreach is that, and especially cold email. And it's funny because up until this day, they're still shouting that cold outreach is dead, while people are still generating sales meetings with cold outreach. And the only difference between now and a few years ago is the fact that the quick question cold email is completely dead, in my opinion, because I have experienced it firsthand. I have sent thousands of emails with the quick question subject line and just a generic pitch that got people into a sales call. It definitely worked, but with the prospects that I'm chasing right now, I know for a fact that it's not working. So I have tried all sorts of platforms. I have tried cold DMing on LinkedIn. I have tried cold DMing on Instagram, different formats, just a regular pitch, a call to action to a Loom video, directly sending a Loom video. But I wasn't getting the results that I've hoped for. And to be honest, I hated doing this as well. I'm not a big outreach kind of guy. Like, I don't like it to send cold DMs every single day, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And the fact that I hated that approach and that I wasn't getting the results that I hoped, that made me change my approach. So when doing cold outreach, you're essentially competing with everyone else because it's super low friction to get into, to get in contact with potential clients. So especially if you're starting out like me, like everybody is doing it. And you need to make yourself stand out in the crowd of other cold pitchers, essentially. So how I was planning on doing that was by, number one, outreaching to people who didn't have an offer yet. And number two, by sending podcast invites to my ideal clients. I can hear you think from wherever you are to here, like, why the hell would you send pitches to people who don't even have an offer? And I understand completely where you're coming from, but I did it because I thought it would be easier to convince them to start and monetize their audience, and then from there on, I could help them with their funnels, etc. Now, I've sent in the last month or so, I've sent over 500 creators a message who didn't have an offer. I got a reply rate of around 25%, and of that reply rate, only 7 people said, like, okay, I'm interested. And from those 7 people, nobody converted to a sales meeting. Suddenly, they totally ghosted me, and I didn't even have a conversation with them. And after analyzing these numbers last week, I've decided to skip the people that don't have an offer and focus on the podcast invites, because of the 243 people that I invited on the podcast, I booked 4 podcast episodes where I had already 2 recordings and around 30 potential podcast guests who said they were interested, but we're just chatting to book it in. And of the 2 podcast recordings I already had, one resulted in a second call where I gave advice on how to improve their funnel. And the second one told me, like, it's interesting, but it's not the right timing for me, but you can definitely follow up in the months to come. So this way of outreaching is, in my opinion, just the biggest win ever, because this gives me the opportunity to, one, build rapport and trust with my ideal client, and I'm making interesting content for other prospects to see in the meantime. So it's a win-win. And although I didn't have any clients out of this strategy yet, I really have the feeling that this is only a matter of time. And that's the reason why I decided, like, okay, I'm going to skip the people without an offer, because I'm investing a lot of time in a few replies, but not in real tangible results. Like, there were no sales calls that happened. And with the podcast invites, I've only sent 10 a day. So it was very doable to just up that amount of outreaches and to go for 20 a day. And it's my goal to have at least 2 podcast recordings every week, so that I can, if they're interested or not, depending on how our conversation goes, we can have a chat about potentially doing a sales call together, or just me helping them, whatever. But yeah, I really have the feeling like this is the best way forward for me right now, especially because I'm also investing a lot of time into making content. And by having the interviews with prospects of mine, it's just like, okay, I'm getting in contact with them, I am building a relationship, and I am creating content at the same time. And it only makes sense for me. So I don't know if you're watching this and you are starting your own business as well, service-based or whatever, it doesn't matter, and you are having a hard time of getting in contact with potential clients and not getting the fuck off reply on a quick question email, or just having no reply, then really I urge you to start a podcast and just invite your ideal clients on it for an interview. Because even if I don't manage to get a sales call out of the podcast interview, I've had a really pleasant conversation where I learned a lot from, and it's a relationship that I'm building for the future as well. So I'm repeating myself, but it's really a win-win the more I think about it. So that's why I am going all in on the podcast invites, and I'm doubling my outreach from 10 a day to 20 a day, and we'll see what that gets me. So yeah, it's very exciting. And I will definitely keep you updated of the results that this strategy is having. But right now it's time to go into the accountability section of this week. And my goals last week were record a solo podcast episode and record 2 interviews. One of the interviews canceled, so I only did one. The solo podcast episode I did, you already seen that. I also did 50 podcast outreaches to prospects. I did 100 outreaches to prospects without a funnel. I made 5 reels/shorts, and I did an analysis of my outreach data and made some decisions from there on. And I also improved my outreach messages in the podcast inviting sequence, if I can call it like that. And my goals of this week are doing 100 podcast outreaches, making 2 reels/shorts. Why not 5? Because I'm experimenting with, if I post every day, what does this mean for reach and that kind of stuff, and make a funnel analysis video and edit it and plan it in. This is a part of my content strategy on YouTube. So yeah, that's it for today. If you like these all over the place episodes where I'm brutally honest about how I'm building Client Revolution and how it's going, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow on your favorite podcast streaming service, and then I wish you an amazing day. Bye-bye.